Funding for this edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by the New Jersey Education Association, Valley Bank, the Russell Berry Foundation, making a difference, PSE&G, committed to providing safe, reliable energy now and in the future, the Fidelco Group, Kessler Foundation, changing the lives of people with disabilities, St. Joseph's Health, world-class care just around the corner, Fedway Associates, Inc., and by NJ Best, New Jersey's 529 College Savings Plan. Promotional support provided by NorthJersey.com and Local IQ, part of the USA Today network, and by New Jersey Globe.
This is One-on-One. I'm an equal American just like you are.
The jobs of tomorrow are not the jobs of yesterday.
Look at this. You got this?
Here it is, man. Look at that.
Life without dance is boring.
I don't care how good you are or how good you think you are, there is always something to learn.
Do you enjoy talking politics?
No.
People call me because they feel nobody's paying attention.
Our culture, I don't think, has ever been tested the way it's being tested right now.
Such a good question. High five.
Hi, Steve Adubato. Welcome to all the folks watching us on public broadcasting and on other outlets. We are honored to be joined by Brian Stelter, who is the anchor of Reliable Sources. I check out every Sunday on CNN, 11 to 12 noon, 11 a.m. Also, CNN chief media correspondent and the author of this book. It's called Hoax, Donald Trump, Fox News, and the Dangerous Distortion of Truth. Brian, great to have you with us.
Thank you. Thanks.
We're taping on the 17th of November. Unlike CNN, where you can catch things going on every day, this will be seen a little bit after. So let's put things in perspective. A lot has changed in the, let's call it, the right-wing conservative media landscape since you wrote this book. Has it gotten us any closer to truth, or is it worse than ever before?
I think we're seeing a fracturing of right-wing media, and it's not a good thing for the country because there is a steady supply of mis and disinformation. When I say misinformation, that could be a mistake, it could be an accident, but disinformation is intentional. And there's been a lot of that in and around this election season, this never-ending election season. Some on Fox, but some also on channels that are even more right-wing than Fox, like Newsmax and One America News. So for the first time in the 24-year history of Fox News, it has competition from the right. This is a new development, and I think it's probably a problem for the Murdochs.
One of the things about your book that I particularly appreciated, and I did some work at Fox back in the day, if you will, so I know some of the players there, but you talk specifically about Sean Hannity and Laura Ingraham and some of the others, who you have argued over the years. And we're not going backwards. We're trying to put this in perspective. At PBS, we try to make sense of public policy, public opinion, all of these issues. But Brian Stelter has argued that there's this loop that has gone on between Trump and some of the opinion hosts that is really unhealthy. What do you mean by that, Brian?
It's unhealthy because they misinform Trump, and then Trump misinforms the rest of the country. And yes, the Trump years are coming to an end, but the damage is quantifiable. We can measure some of this. There have been arguments, debates about immigration and other policy matters.
About COVID?
And most importantly about COVID, because in the early days of the pandemic, Fox stars downplayed the disease. And the president watches all of this stuff, gets it in his head, and it's really Fox leading the president. I think it's oftentimes Fox setting the agenda, not Trump. And that has had troubling consequences. But let me also say Fox is a complicated place. There are great journalists there. There's a lot of people trying to make the content better. It's a complicated place. But the highest rated shows on the channel are the ones that have been misinforming the president. And in many ways, I think that's what ruined the Trump years. I would argue, and I want to see if readers of Hoax agree with me, that Fox did Trump a disservice. And Fox is one of the reasons why Trump lost the election.
How so?
I think because by misinforming him and by keeping him in a safe space, an echo chamber where he's only hearing what he wants to hear and what he already agrees with, he didn't have a sense of what the country was really going through and what Americans were really thinking. On Fox and Friends, the Fox News morning show, they like to go to diners and interview Trump voters. But, they set these diners up so that you barely hear from any dissenters. You barely hear from any Democrats. That's not reality. I mean, at least in most parts of the country, I'm sure I could find a couple diners where there's only Trump supporters. But you know what I mean? The Fox messaging I think gave Trump a false impression of what the country really was feeling. And perhaps that did a disservice to him.
So, Brian, looking forward into 2021, this will be seen, as I said, in the first quarter of 2021 as well. Does it matter whether Donald Trump, post-presidency, creates a media empire or whatever he wants to call it, a TV station, or hooks up with one of the others? Does it really matter that much what he does? Or is it his Twitter feed that so many of us in the media follow and report?
Yeah, I think it does matter that he's going to launch a media platform. We will see exactly what he does, but Twitter will be the foundation of whatever he does, because he is able to command an audience on his Twitter feed. For example, there are times where he will tweet, "Tune into Maria Bartiromo's show," and then her show on Fox News will have a big rating spike. So he does have a power, even post-presidency, to move his base and to give his base directions on what to watch and where and when. That's influence. Of course, it doesn't mean most of the country is going to tune in, but his base is still going to pay attention via his Twitter feed.
But beyond all the insider baseball stuff, Brian, big issues for democracy in this sense. If people believe certain things and they go to media and information sources that reinforce what they believe as opposed to challenging them, what does that mean in terms of people being open to other points of view, not only in the citizenry, in terms of citizens, but what about in Washington with elected officials who do the same thing?
Right. There's so many lawmakers that are just chasing clicks and retweets right now. They're just chasing attention from Fox News, trying to get on Fox, trying to impress their core constituents, and not actually doing the business of governing. That is a terrible trend that we've seen exacerbated in recent years. And I fear that will continue. I don't see easy short-term solutions to that problem. I can tell you, though, there's a lot of journalists at newsrooms like CNN and Fox that want to actually cover the policy issues, that want to cover the meaty issues of the day, and not these culture war, phony baloney stories. But, at the end of the day, it's about leadership, and lawmakers and presidents and White Houses have to provide leadership and give us policy news to cover.
On Reliable Sources, you have great journalists on from all over the country every Sunday, by the way, from 11 to 12. I just want to plug that again. I've learned so much from the show. But here's the question. What advice do you have for those of us? I don't mean just in the public broadcasting family, but those of us who are frankly are trying to do the right thing. What is the right thing in 2021 and 2022 moving forward if we want to be part of the solution and not just part of this echo chamber?
Yeah, I think the war on truth is real, but truth is winning. Most Americans see through the lies and the fog machines that are out there. It's mostly coming from the right, but there's noise and nonsense on the left as well. Most Americans see through it. Most Americans just want to know what is true. It is so confusing when you're on Facebook and Twitter, seeing all these stories, not knowing what's real and what's made up. And that's why these newsrooms are actually more important than ever before. I think it's actually a great time to be a journalist, because people really need help knowing what is real and what is not in the world around them. I think that's increasingly the role journalists are playing as a verification layer to tell you, that story is authentic, that one's made up, that one's hyper partisan, and you really shouldn't buy too much into it. They're making a mountain out of a molehill over there. We are in some ways navigators, trusted navigators through this complicated information world, and that's a vital role to play.
So interesting. You said that's what the citizens of our country need. More complicated question. Do they want those of us in the media? We always say, you're laughing already because you know where I'm going.
I do.
In public broadcasting, we try to focus on issues, social determinants of health having to do with race and disproportionate impact of COVID on people who are Black and brown, police brutality issues, a whole range of economic issues, strife. Do you think people, not to mention infrastructure, climate change, et cetera, do you think most people, enough Americans are going, you know what? I want that.
I see in ratings and in traffic and in page views and in all these measurement forms that there is a big audience for trusted, what we would think of as old-fashioned, mainline institutional news coverage, the kind provided by PBS and NBC and CNN. There is still a big audience for that programming. At the same time, though, partisan voices on the extremes are a lot louder. And it can sometimes seem like Sean Hannity is more important and more influential than David Muir. Actually, David Muir on ABC has a much bigger audience than Sean Hannity, but Hannity is louder. It's much more emotional. It's much more in your face. And so I do think it's a worthwhile reminder that actually it's the straightforward news that reaches a bigger audience. What we do about those extreme voices, how do we let people know that loud does not mean better or best? Loud does not mean most popular. That continues to be an issue, I think, going forward.
Final question. Joe Biden, president moving forward. Again, this will be seen in 2021 as well. Advice for him and his administration as it relates to dealing with the media and the media dealing with President Biden.
Right. There are some norms that the Trump administration destroyed that Biden will hopefully bring back. A sense of honesty and expectation of transparency. I know Trump appeared to be accessible by giving lots of interviews and talking to Fox and calling into Fox and Friends, but much of what he was saying was untrue. American people deserve access and honesty from public officials. So that would be number one. I think number two, let's have more transparency from this White House. Visitor logs, for example, which the Trump administration did not release. There are some easy, simple things, they should be simple, that the Biden administration can do to both be and act transparent and show that they have nothing to hide, to show that they want to restore a sense of decency and normalcy. And then, of course, I think what's most important is the press has got to hold his feet to the fire. What we've saw in the last 4 years of the Trump administration is a more adversarial, aggressive news media. I think that's a good thing for the country. I think it's long overdue. It's more like a British model where we are not trying to cozy up to power. We are trying to hold power to account. That has to continue in the Biden years and with whoever comes after him as well.
And by the way, we are not the enemy of the people. This is the book. It's called Hoax. And I found it a great read. Check it out. And Brian Stelter, check him out on reliable sources every Sunday from 11 a.m. to 12 noon, and also on CNN on a regular basis as a chief media correspondent there. Brian, you honor us by your presence here on Public Broadcasting.
Oh, thank you. Thanks.
Have a great day. I'm Steve Adubato. We'll be right back.
To watch more one-on-one with Steve Adubato, find us online and follow us on social media.
We're now joined by Angel Santiago, who is the 2020-2021 New Jersey State Teacher of the Year. You heard that right. He is the Teacher of the Year, fifth grade teacher at Laura Flemming Elementary School in beautiful Camden County. Good to see you, Angel.
Thanks for having me, Steve. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, first of all, congratulations. How did you find out that you were the Teacher of the Year? A, and B, what was your reaction?
So obviously I knew I was the Camden County Teacher of the Year earlier in the summer. And, later in the fall, my administrators they sent me an email and asked if I wanted to celebrate being Camden County Teacher of the Year on a Zoom call, just like this, a Zoom call. And they would invite my students. And so, we had a bunch of the administrators here in Camden County and Gloucester Township, and my students were also there as well. We celebrated being Camden County Teacher of the Year. Then they asked my students to head back to their original Zoom meeting, and while I stayed. And then at that point, Interim Commissioner D.M.A. appeared on the screen and notified me that I had a new position, a new role as a New Jersey State Teacher of the Year. Obviously, anyone who's experienced this position or this calling, this is the pinnacle of your profession. This is the top, and to be recognized in this way and with this honor was I was left speechless. I was very emotional. First thing I asked is if I can call my mom and let my mom know about the honor. And
how proud was she?
She was obviously, I'm the oldest one in the family, the oldest grandchild, and the one who has the highest degree when it comes to college. And so one of the first ones to actually have a degree from college. So she was very proud. She cried on the phone. We cried together. My mom has been probably the most important person in my life throughout my entire life. So she was very proud, very happy.
Angel, let me ask you this. We've talked to so many teachers in collaboration with our relationship with the New Jersey Education Association, so many extraordinary educators. And I ask this question all the time, but I'm going to twist it up a little bit. I usually ask, when did you know you wanted to be a teacher? Why? But I'm going to change it in this way. A, why did you go into teaching? And B, as a fifth grade teacher, and our daughter's in the fifth grade as we speak right now, is this what you signed up for? Teaching in the way you're teaching now?
So obviously I wanted to be a teacher quite early in my high school career. I had great teachers that kind of guided me, mentored me. I had a little stint where I was a professional musician for a little bit. And then I went straight into college a little bit later than most people do. I went in my mid-20s. And so, I was always around great educators, my educators in the Vineland public school system. Whether I was lucky or whether they just had great educators, I was always around someone who kind of pushed me in that direction. When it comes to this particular year and, how special this year is, and I'm going to use the word special because I do think there's positive things that we can take from this. We could never predict what this would happen. But there's one thing that stays constant throughout the profession of education, and it's that adaptability. Like, we have to be adaptable, right? So we've known adaptation throughout the entire. Most teachers know what adaptation is, because curriculums change, standards change, and times has changed, as well as the profession should be adaptable, because new policies come up, new ways of pedagogy come up. So even though I'm not prepared, I wasn't necessarily prepared for this, I was able to adapt because I knew that came with the job. And I know
excuse me, Angel, but not being in the classroom with your students, and again, we're going to go back and forth. This will be seen later in 2021, and God willing, things will have gotten better and we can be together in a classroom, but who knows? But are you still feeling this? Do you still have the sense that you're connecting with your students, you're teaching your students, and more importantly, they're learning?
I do think that we are connecting with our students. I do think that with the technology that we have nowadays, we are still able to be with our students. Imagine if we didn't have this technology. I don't necessarily think, I do miss my children physically. I miss being around their presence. I think every teacher throughout the state of New Jersey probably feels that. But I do understand where we're at, in the form of health and safety. And I do think that this is part of the future when it comes to education, and that there are some things that we can take from this that will be beneficial as we go along in the future of education. I think we have to be open-minded. I think we have to be, we have to do the best that we can possibly do. And all the teachers throughout the state of New Jersey have stepped up to the plate and really, put themselves out there, have become creative. Professional learning communities have grown to not just include the 5 people or 6 people you work with, but a network of teachers throughout the state that that we weren't, privy to have prior to this experience.
And real quick, we've got about 2 minutes left. Diversity in education. You had an interesting quote. It took me a while to see minorities in education. You are one of the few Latino men in elementary school education. Why is that so important?
I think it's important on different aspects and different levels. For instance, obviously we want our student population to be reflected in our teacher population.
That's
but more
right.
importantly, I believe that even our regular population of students, it's important for them to see positive role models throughout every culture being representative inside their classroom, inside their schools, and at an earlier age as well, in elementary education as well. And that goes with genders as well, men, women. We have to diversify that so that our students are exposed to different cultures, different genders, and they can, just be acculturated and understand different forms of teaching, different styles of teaching. And so I think that's very important.
1 to 10. You love teaching. 1 to 10. How much?
That's an easy one. That's a 10.
Okay, listen, you're the teacher of the year. I know you have to say that, but you seem to me like the kind of person who actually believes that. 10 out of 10. In the age of, with a global pandemic, you're still 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. That's an easy one.
How great it's good. I'm sorry.
I said that's an easy one, Steve. 10 out of 10.
Well, if you're 10 out of 10, teaching remotely, little hybrid, who knows what's going to happen. I can't imagine what the number is, scale from 1 to 10, when you get back in the classroom with your students. So let me just say this. On behalf of all the parents with our children in public schools, thank you to public school educators like you who make a difference every day in our children's lives. Thank you, Angel.
Thank you so much, Steve.
We'll be right back right after this.
To watch more one-on-one with Steve Adubato, find us online and follow us on social media.
We're now joined by Dr. Laura Greenwald, a music department chair, director of vocal activities, and the Choral and Opera Workshop at Caldwell University. Good to see you, Doctor.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
It's our pleasure. Let's put this in perspective. Music and mental health, make the connection.
Many of us participate in music as a group activity where we share working on a common goal. We love to sing. Of course, singing releases endorphins, which make you feel better. And we can sing and express our emotions through music and through singing.
How challenging is it? We were just talking before we got on the air. I'll disclose I teach a doctoral program, a course in the doctoral program for educational administrators at Caldwell University. And I was just saying it's challenging to do that remotely. How do you do what you do remotely?
Well, I'm not doing it all remotely. The music department faculty are in person on campus. And for some students, we are the only class that they have on campus. But I'm really proud of the way our faculty has stepped into a very challenging situation. We switched to remote in the spring, and we were remote then. But over the summer, we looked at what we could do, and we thought about how we needed to make music. And in fact, I teach voice, so I purchased a setup so I could teach here at home. And it became so hard for some of my students that I'm meeting some voice students in person, wearing a mask, socially distanced in a ventilated room. All of our ensembles are on campus, and I would love to share with you some of the innovative things they're doing, if I may.
Such as?
The marching band doesn't have football games to perform at, but they performed in the parking lot for family and friends, and they marched up the street for a 100th birthday party on Sunday. The opera workshop, we are doing a devised opera, and we wrote a script about the pandemic and what it feels like, and we set it to art songs and arias of Schubert and Mozart. We record that this afternoon without an audience because of the aerosol, and we're singing with masks because of the aerosol. My chorale, I'm really proud of a couple of projects we're doing. We did a sister project because Caldwell University was founded by the Sisters of St. Dominic, and I've been there 30 years, but there are not so many sisters on campus any longer. So I contacted my friends and I sent some of the students out to interview them, and they came back and presented individual interviews with the sisters, sharing their experiences and their talents. And probably the first project we signed on to, and it's going to be the culmination of the semester, New Jersey composer Karen Siegel created a work that was designed to incorporate the latency. It's really hard to perform music on the computer because of the delay. And so she incorporated that into a choral piece that she wrote, and we're supposed to premiere it this Thursday. But in fact, because I have so many students in person, it was harder to do it with some students remote and some in person. So we flipped it, and we're actually singing with masks, socially distanced, in the gymnasium, streaming Facebook Live this Thursday. So everything has to be, you have to be innovative, you have to be flexible.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry you just triggered something, Dr. Greenwald. I've had many conversations with your new president, Matt Whalen, and what's so interesting is we talked about innovation, leadership, and teaching. Much of being a great university professor teacher is about innovation, correct?
Well, I think it's about, you have to teach at any level. You have to love teaching. And at Caldwell University, one of the things I'm so proud of is that we teach the students as much as the subject. It's not teaching the subject to students. We teach the students the subject. So I look at my students, I look at what I have, and part of the reason I flipped this project on Thursday was because it was for the benefit of my students. I felt it would be a better experience for them if we could do it in person. And that's the reason I flipped some of my teaching, my private teaching in person, was for the success of the students. That's our primary goal at Caldwell.
Laura, before I let you go, I need to ask you this. Why do you love music so much?
It's my life. I've been teaching and working in music since I was a child. I can't imagine doing anything else. I love the experience of making music with others. And as a teacher and an educator, I love the experience of seeing the light go on with beginners. I have students who are a student who's 85 who just applied to go to graduate school in music. And I just love you're not too old to experience it in some way. Maybe too old to sing at the Metropolitan Opera, but you can always, at any level, at any ability level, you can find joy. And that's what I hope to bring out.
Well, let me just say this, Dr. Laura Greenwald over at Caldwell University, one of our higher ed partners and colleagues for a long time. I got to say this, one of the things beyond innovation, beyond new techniques of teaching, the one thing you can't teach people is to have great passion, and you bring it. Dr. Laura, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure.
I'm Steve Adubato. That's Dr. Laura Greenwald, and we thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation. Funding has been provided by the New Jersey Education Association, Valley Bank, the Russell Berry Foundation, PSC&G, the Fidelco Group, Kessler Foundation, St. Joseph's Health, Fedway Associates, Inc., and by NJ Best. Promotional support provided by NorthJersey.com and Local IQ, part of the USA Today network, and by New Jersey Globe.
What is your child's dream for the future? Doctor? Teacher? Architect? Whatever they aspire to be, a college education may realize those dreams. And NJ Best can help. It's the college savings plan specifically designed for New Jersey families. Start saving today with as little as $25, because now is the time to invest in their future. To learn about NJ Best 529 College Savings Plan, its investment objectives, risks, and costs, read the Investor Handbook available at njbest.com.